Hello and welcome to Architecture, Design, and Photography. Today we are speaking with Charlotte Wiederholt. She is a highly accomplished professional with extensive experience in the field of industrial design and creative leadership. Since 1998, she has been serving as the president and creative director of Studio Other, a renowned furniture solutions company based in Los Angeles, California. Under Charlotte's leadership, Studio Other has flourished, offering custom furniture solutions designed in collaboration with clients and architects. Under her leadership, Charlotte has grown the organization's annual sales to over 20 million. Give it up for Charlotte Wiederholt. Charlotte Wiederholt, welcome to Architecture, Design, and Photography. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
Busy. It's been a rainy summer here on the East Coast, especially in the Northeast, as it is today. And so all my work at the beginning of the summer has been pushed into the last half of summer. So fun, but yeah, that's just the Northeast for you. But I'm excited to talk to you because it looks like from your trajectory, you went almost right from school right into running Studio Other.
Correct. This is true. If they ever let me go, I have no other skills. And so hopefully, hopefully
right?
I'll end my career here.
So I have a friend who's had a very similar trajectory to yours. He graduated high school in '95 and went right through architecture school to then, I think he worked 3 years for his essentially IDP internship as an architect, and then went and started his own firm. He and I started together, but then my creative attention span was not long enough to work as an architect. I need to work in smaller chunks. So he, like you, went right from school into a small period of doing work related towards what he was doing. I don't know what you did during that time, but I want to hear that. But he went through a very small period in between graduating and starting his own business, and that's all he's known that whole time. And there's a lot that you can lose from your life by being so committed and directly into accomplishing what you want to accomplish, and you get to this point of success, but it costs you something in that whole process. And that's kind of my first question. And also, I'm very interested in how difficult and different it is for a creative mind to be able to establish, run, maintain, develop a business. Those two things are real issues when it comes to an open mind. It's hard to corral it, you know? So walk me through first what you are like as a person and why you chose to go to design school, industrial design school at Arizona State, if I'm getting that right.
Yeah.
Tell me how you got there, and then those gap 3 years, essentially 2-3 years, to starting your business first.
Yeah. So I've always grown up being a tinkerer and making things. My dad had he's an engineer, and he had a little spot in the basement. He did woodworking, and there was a spot of scrap wood that was like my area to play with. So I would always go down and like nail things together and make little, go-karts and tree forts and greenhouses and kind of whatever I, wanted to make.
Go-karts?
Go-karts, yes. I had a very badass go-kart actually when I was in junior high that had
How many girls say that? That's great.
Yeah, not many girls say that. It was I was definitely kind of the envy of the neighborhood of the boys. Not to any knowing of my, there was no agenda on my side. It was just I thought they were very cool. And so my dad was like, "Well, let's get a go-kart." And we got it. And I drove it around the yard. Probably for 4 weeks and completely tore the grass up to the point my mom was like, "We cannot have this go-kart anymore." And finally my dad, we would take it off to like the water preserve and areas where we could drive it around. But
Nice.
so I've just had a, kind of an interest in things, making things, what could things be? Had that
Now,
kind
did
of
you grow up in California?
No, so actually I grew up in Massachusetts.
Oh, no
And
way. Where at in
yeah,
Massachusetts?
Acton, outside of outside of Boston, maybe about 45 minutes.
I know the sign from the densely settled little cute signs that they put up when you're driving through the woods, and it's like you're entering a new holler or whatever they call it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Okay,
Moved to
cool. All right.
Yeah. And then my dad has a house on Sebago Lake, so I will be in Maine
Oh,
next week.
wow.
So yeah,
Oh,
I
ah,
was,
we should have done this in person and I
I
could have
know,
taken up some of your vacation. That would have been
I,
great.
it would have been fine. It would have been fine. It's, Maine is lovely. It's an amazing
Yeah.
place. So you're lucky you
Yeah.
got to live there. Um, but so back to the coach. So I've always been kind of a tinkerer by nature. Um, always felt very, my family's very engineering and science based. So it felt very unpractical to be maybe an architect or also architecture. It sounds like you can relate to this. Is a little too big scale for me. It's too
Mm.
overwhelming. It's too much to kind of process.
How
Also,
did you know that? How
I
did you
think
know that ahead of time?
because I kind of could relate to what it took to build things. When I'm very instant gratification sort of person and I have a little bit of a short attention. Yes, I can relate. Like you want that instant, like it's the idea, the spark of the idea, and then
Mm.
executing through the idea and getting it to where it's sort of like worked out in your head and then worked out in a physical form. And then I kind of lose
Yeah. Yeah.
interest in it. And I'm
And
sort of,
you learned that about yourself like pre-college?
I did, yes, because I was just, and it's
Lucky
also, I think,
you.
yeah. Well, I also think the ability to have things that I could make that,
Mhm.
my sort of, I was allowed to kind of, we had a house with like a stream and preservation land behind it. So there was always the opportunity to go out and kind of make things and put things together. And
Right.
so I could understand for myself that building a full tree house was not my thing because I didn't want, it was too big in scale. I couldn't get enough wood, first of all. Second of all, it was
That
just too much. But building, some small aspect of it was tangible for me.
right.
So that's kind of how I
Jeez.
to it.
That like, I haven't really been able to outline that until my late
Mhm.
30s, early 40s. Maybe this is something that they talk about, girls maturing quicker than boys. I didn't become a man till like 44, so that might be it. But that's really, man, that's so self-aware to actually know, like, well, I'd like to do that. That seems creative, but I know enough from my own personal experiences and I've been self-reflective enough to understand like when it comes to a big project, I can have great ideas, but the execution on those with how creative and turnover and quick my mind's working on all these other fun ideas that grab my attention to go on too long of a project is not going to be the most effective use of my mind. Like that that's impressive. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's, it's just sort of something that clued in my brain that I was,
Yeah. Well,
too much, too big, too
mm,
large
okay.
to be able to do that.
I had to
Um,
go through 7 years of college and 3 years of practice to figure that out, so
but you figured it out, right? That's kind of,
fun yeah, yeah.
you know,
Well, I figured it out through failure, but even at the point of failure, I didn't know that that was what was going on. It
oh,
took quite a few years of, not recovering from the trauma of, working as a professional, but I just didn't I wasn't good at it, and I would be unmotivated because it was so heavy and crushing under the weight of that long focusing for that long in such a kind of narrow sense that my mind just felt like a pack of dogs that was freaking out and wanted to get out. And so it's yeah, to notice that about yourself and then to be able to channel it into what you can focus on long enough. That ability of self-aware introspection is very valuable. So
yeah. But what's interesting? You made it through architecture school.
I loved it because other people were telling me what to focus on, and it was in a short enough time span. I'd start at the beginning of the studio. We'd have the outline of what we'd need. I would go to town on it until it was just done to the nth degree. And I'd have like a few weeks at the end of the semester where I didn't have anything to do. And I'd be out surfing, having a great time while all my classmates were doing overnighters towards the end. And it wasn't that I was more talented than them. It was just my, how I worked was here it is. I'm 100% focused on what I'm interested in, and this is what I'm interested in right now. And then when I was done with it, I was able to go recreate. So
Mhm. So
that's
you
how I
you
did
made
it.
you made it work then
Made it
within,
work. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, architecture's, that's a feat to get through architecture school and kind of all of it's a commitment of time for sure.
That is weird. That was easy. The practice of it was very hard for
Mm,
me. It's a
yeah,
different thing. It's like if the practice of architecture was similar to the schooling of architecture, I'd still be an architect, but it's
yeah,
not.
yeah,
So
yeah. That is, I mean, isn't that most schooling experiences though, that, it's it's
I
like
mean,
a
if you go to school for business, yeah, I guess you're learning the how business works. You're learning a technical trade in a sense, and then you go and you put it into practice. So yeah, I mean, again, it sounds like you're much brighter than me in understanding these
I
things,
wouldn't say
and I'm,
that. I
I
would
sense them but don't articulate them much. Maybe
I wouldn't say that for a second. I just,
I I
one
kid.
small thing I clued in, or maybe I
Yeah.
didn't want to take on the hard work of, committing to architecture school. That could have been it too.
Yeah, I mean, if I look back and I had to choose differently, the only thing I'd choose would be to add a business focus to what I'm doing because I don't I I'm not talented at business. I'm good enough to take care of myself and, know how to weight negotiations to make sure I'm benefiting them, they're benefiting me, and I'm not getting taken advantage. I can weigh that out in the moment quick enough, but I'm not like good with business. So
Yeah. That is a huge disservice to creative types that they don't teach us about, business and sales,
yeah,
because I think
huge.
it's huge. If they added that to the course curriculum at colleges, I think it could change the experience for creative minds through their whole
Mm.
career, because we
Yeah,
don't that's
because
necessarily
yeah,
what we do.
and it's also intrinsic that you think you're going to focus on what you're talented at, and that's all you're gonna have to do, and you're just gonna get a patron saint to just, like, help you live, you know? I had a patron saint in my wife that she paid for everything, excuse me, while I started this business, and if I didn't have that, I couldn't have made it working a 9 to 5. I would have eventually moved into my car and been happy and figured everything out day to day. But by her taking care of everything, I was able to set up an aesthetic and a process and a business over time that now provides for both of us. And now she doesn't have to work and I do the work. And she set me up. She was the T to the drive, I guess. And it worked out. So that's great. But yeah, that, that
That
would
is
help if we had that in school more.
Yeah, yeah. Because I have to say, so our parent company is a sales organization, and
Mm.
to be exposed to how to sell and how to value, how do you negotiate a deal? How do you work through a deal? How does a sales relationship work has been mind opening for me. And that's
Mm.
actually a really hard thing for me to learn and a good thing for me to learn because it's a whole different process for the creative mind.
Yeah. So, did you find a trick to understanding what they were talking about in business, in sales, and all that that a creative mind has to translate to be able to interact with, or did you have that intrinsically already, that other type of mind?
No, I did not, and I think truth be told, it was very, I mean, it sounds awful, probably repulsive to me to be sales,
No, no,
it's
I
like
get it. Yeah.
right? Like, certainly in the creative field, like, the conversation of sales and how do you negotiate things, and I'm trading money for something feels kind of gross and dirty, and it's not in our nature at all, right? It's yeah, we're like
Uh,
and we kinda look at salespeople in a way of like, "Oh, that's not anything I would wanna have to partake in," but
right.
it's such a necessary I think so for years, I sort of struggled with that dirty ugliness of it, if you will, but
Mm,
then I kind of flipped the script around, like, people need and want what we do, and there's value in what we do, and so it's more just about some sort of a trade. If
mm,
you can kind of think about it that way and think about it, I always think of it now as like it's a win-win. Like they're getting
mm,
something beautiful and amazing, and if we're really doing good work for our clients, there's value in that, and we're creating something that they need and want. And so, our currency is the design, the idea, the execution on it. They're giving us funds in return. And it sort of makes it about a partnership together
right.
versus kind of this hostage situation of I'm going to try to get more for you from you. I'm going to give you less. That's kind of the typical perspective on sales.
Right.
So
Right.
that's how I've kind of been able to navigate through it in my mind and make it a good thing and a good trade.
Yeah, the difficulty with the creative mind and the creative process and monetizing it and turning it into a business is that creativity is something that pulls from such a complete and personal aspect of your being that to exchange it for funds feels at in some small degree like prostitution. You're giving away something of deep uh, introspection, process, realization, failure, success, emotional insecurities, confident, all of it is involved when you're working creatively. And if it's not, you're not that good.
Yeah.
So if you're doing it and you're doing it well, every bit of your being goes into that process, and tend to exchange it just for cash feels like you're doing something wrong almost. So I get it that that's not the situation, but the emotional presence of that situation for someone who's going from youth and school into then now I take this incredible talent and weirdness about me that cripples me for so many other things, but is
Mhm.
this benefit that I'm now going to monetize. Just, it's a good luck kind of situation. I mean, how many people do you know that are insanely talented, but they can't get past their own complexities of themselves because of this talent? That's the flip side to an incredible coin.
Yeah.
That they just can't do it because it's so hard to bring those type of things together.
Yeah, so hard. And I think it's the hardest thing for certainly the junior people on my team to come in, put their heart and their soul and their love and their passion into something and have, a client come back and just say, well, I got it for cheaper somewhere else. Or I'm not interested in working, I mean, that is so
Yeah, yeah.
crushing. And it's that I think getting them kind of through that hurdle and into a place of like, that wasn't meant to be yours. Let it go,
Mhm,
move on. That wasn't, let's take the ideas, the exploration, the creative thought that you gained from that experience and move on to the next thing. Apply that to the next thing. Like take lessons learned and grow and expand. And
mhm,
don't worry about that somebody rejected you. But it
mm.
does feel like rejection. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's hard. It's very hard. And I think it's how do you sort of like it's you don't want to build the wall up because then you sort of shut down the creativity and then the
Yeah,
next client you don't give as much to them, but it's that fine line between saying like I do this just to give freely and if I get something in return great and I can take it
yeah.
move next one next one next one next one and not get as invested in it.
Hmm. It's such a fragile balancing act, because if you go too far one way, you become unable to work in the world. Like,
Yeah.
I saw some kind of meme recently that it was an artist that went from not psychotic and his art to when he was deeply psychotic and fell off the end, his art was amazing. And you see, and it's all him painting rabbits. I forget, a pretty famous artist, I think. But the first rabbit, when he was not psychotic, was like, yeah, it's a rabbit. And then
Nice.
as it goes along, it becomes more and more abstract and it just becomes so incredible and beautiful. But you also know this guy's going psychotic in the process. And this is coming from that. The creative mind, man, it's such a hard thing to manage, to take for a walk without it attacking everything. It's
It's attacking everyone else and attacking yourself too.
yeah,
That's
at night, that moment between consciously awake and fully asleep, that moment, ooh, good
it,
luck.
yes, yeah, yeah. That's when, right. I call it the my 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. worry time, where I get up and just like, right, it's just all of that it's that psychotic rabbit comes out
Yeah,
for an
yeah,
hour, and it's kind of it's like that's the time that's given to freely run, but it can just spin and turn and make things, completely crazy. And after a while, I have to be like, okay, you need to go. Like, no, I need to shut you down and quiet you
right.
down because you're not.
You've had a good run. We're gonna get up now, and you're gonna
Exactly.
yeah.
You've been in your pen, getting back in your pen, and we're gonna live our lives now.
So how did you so you came to the realization through your own scheduling of your own projects as a kid, learning about yourself, getting to a place where you understood, okay, I want to work creatively. I intrinsically knew that when I was of the same age, but didn't think it was actually possible to work as a creative. So I focused on first, I was going to be a dentist. Then I was like, woo, architect, that's really crazy and out there. I'll do that. And then when I eventually got to telling my dad that I was going to be a photographer, his genuine response was he laughed and then said, "You'll never be able to provide for a family like that." And my father's a very loving, very intelligent. It was just from the culture that we came from, working as a creative was a death sentence and you better have a wife with a job, right? That's just all that was. But it's funny. And I always remind him of it. But um, to to go from then knowing your own personality and having good insight, and then knowing I should go into potentially industrial design type of stuff. Okay, you went through industrial design school. Tell me about the time between 95 and 98. There's not many people who can go from school and only have that long before they get into a career that they stay with and develop into something for the next 20 some years. So walk me through that.
So that period, so when I was in college, I a little bit similar path that I wasn't quite sure what to do. I knew I had a creative mind. I knew I wanted to build something. Architecture was too big for me. Art was too my dad said the same thing. What are you going to do with that? You're never going to make a career of yourself. You can't be an artist. So sort of struggled between all those worlds to find my home, or what was my true passion, or where could my skills align with something that would be, a job or a career. And my best friend's father is an industrial designer. And I remember the first time we were in college, I met her, and I finally met her family, and he was telling me what he did. And I was like, this is a thing. Like, my mind was blown that, I could design things, build things, but at kind of a human scale and relatable to humans. And so I immediately went, switched my major, found industrial design, got right into it. Started studying industrial design. It just felt like home for me finally. Like, I was like, I found my place. And then while I was in college, my boyfriend at the time, I was really into like metal and weld, or, it's like, welding looks really interesting. I want to explore this idea. So he bought me a welder for my birthday. And so I just started like sticking things together in my backyard and welding furniture and stuff and whatever I could.
I just
And
bought a welder, by the way, and I'm so excited.
what did you get? Two. Big
The
or
whatever
big?
the most expensive one that was at Harbor Freight. So
Okay.
I'm not
Right.
high end, but it can do aluminum, TIG, MIG, and the really junky kind, whatever that is. But I got to build a railing for my house, and then I have a bunch of aluminum I want to play with. So yeah, I'm excited. But sorry,
I
boyfriend got
mean,
you a welder. Great gift.
great gift. Yeah, great gift. It was funny. He told me he was calling around, like, in one place he called and he was like, my girlfriend wants a welder. And the guy was like, what? I've never heard that before. That's the craziest thing ever.
Give me her number.
Yeah.
Like,
He
what?
was like, who is this lady? So I found a gallery in Scottsdale, Arizona that I was selling. It was kind of a student gallery. I started selling my furniture through the gallery, and decided that was going to be my career. I was going to be an artist making furniture and selling it.
Which
And
you did.
I did. Yeah, I did. So I did. So that's sort of what I did between graduating and getting this job. Moved to Los Angeles. I have a friend who lived here. She's like, come and live here. So I worked at a tech firm part-time, and I would make furniture in the afternoon, and trying to, search for local galleries, ways to sell my furniture, ways to get connected. And, it was kind of right as the internet was sort of taking off, kind of wasn't it what it is today. So it was a struggle to find people. How do you sell it? Where do you sell it? How do you connect with people to, that'd be interested in the furniture? Finally, after about 3 years of doing that, I said, I think I need to get a job. Like, this is obviously not going to be my career, and I'm never going to make it. I'd like to have health insurance. I would like to, somehow come to a path that would be, prosperous. So I put my resume online, and I got this call, and this group said, we're kind of starting this team. We're not quite sure what we're going to do here, but we need someone like you. Can you come in and let's talk? And so I went to the interview, and they said, well, we're a furniture company, but we're a furniture dealership. And we think there's a need for kind of creative custom furniture, but we don't know how to do it. We're not quite
Ah.
sure what to do. And they said, we have a design department that does standard furniture design, which is kind of space planning. We have a group that does refurbishing. And so we're kind of thinking between those two, we could kind of piece something together. So can you come in? There's sort of two people. We'll kind of figure this out already. So it was three of us when we first started. And sort of the first 5 years where, we did anything that anyone asked for. I did really every aspect of it, from, meeting with the clients, to designing it, to engineering it, to going to local fabricators, figuring out how to have it made. How do you put it on a truck and get it to the site? How do you get into the building? How do you install it? I used to have this reoccurring nightmare before every install, that I would go to the job site and the crew would be there to install it, and they would say, there's no screws. And I'm like, hold on, I know every Home Depot in town. I'll go to Home Depot and get the screws. I would go to Home Depot, and all the bags are beautifully hung in the fastener aisle and all the boxes, but they're all empty. Like, that was my,
Oh, wow. So
yeah,
I
deep
have,
years.
yeah, I have two similar dreams like that. One of them, because I went through high school and then started dental school but didn't finish, I bowed out like a year and a half in. I have some latent anxiety about not graduating from college. And that comes up in dreams that I forgot about a class. And I think I'm going to be able to move on. And I can't because I forgot this one class. And then there's another one that I show up to the beach to go surfing and I'm super excited about it. But for some reason, my boards in the middle get too skinny and they don't work and
Oh,
they're floppy. And I have to watch the beautiful, like these dreams of anxiety that's interesting. You have it. You're so directed and passionate and thinking about what you're doing that the fear you get to there, no screws, you go to Home Depot, no screws. Okay. Interesting.
yeah.
Other people have this too.
I think it's right. It's the failure point. Like it feels sort of like you've thought of everything else except for maybe the screws or maybe
Right.
the one class or the
Yeah.
word that's not going to work. It's yeah, it's kind of it's a little. I think of it too as sort of scatterbrain mind where you're getting prepared for something and there's just so much to think of that there's always sort of that real playing of like what am I going to forget? I know I'm going to forget something and it kind of pops up.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I think I with photography, I've found a way to always be ready for anything. And I think it might be a response to that anxiety of I'm not good at really working out the logistics and planning, but I'm really good at figuring it out in the moment. And I love that. And
Mhm.
so what I do is I everything that I'll ever need, I have in one automobile that goes to all the sites where we shoot. So if we come up short on something, I've got at least in here and a backup or whatever. So that's interesting. Yeah. Hmm.
Do you
All
love
right.
that problem solving aspect though of like if you're at the site and something doesn't go right, how to like is that stressful for you or is it sort of like stressful but enjoyable to solve the problem?
Uh, it is the moment that I'm emotionally able to be paid.
Ah,
So
interesting.
and this is another thing I wanted to talk to you about is that when you start out as a creative, you're being paid through the emotional process of creativity. So creatives will be doing it no matter if they're paid or not. They'll have to go get a job that they hate so they can create if they're not monetizing it. But if they don't create, that creative mind is going to turn on you and it's going to create you into something that you don't want to be. And to start out and not know what I'm doing, but to figure it out is just huge. Like, wow, there's a payment for that emotionally. But once I got consistent, it was because I knew what I was doing rather than figuring out in the moment. So what
Mhm.
I've done is now I've made a process that works in my own head of how to shoot architecture that I can repeat endlessly and it's consistent and it's beautiful. I've got a reputation, but I'm not getting the same emotional payment that I used to. And this is where people plateau and then stagnate if you're not aware of it. This is the self-aware moment that I'm having, right?
Yeah.
Is that if you're not attempting to push beyond what you know, that's when you start to stagnate creatively and then you just start phoning it in and your work becomes dated. And
Mhm.
so to keep active enough, involved enough on the edge of the wave of where trends and everything else are going to stay within that creative explosion of process in your craft, you'll just simply stagnate. So there's anytime I've interacted with creatives around that midlife point, anywhere from late 30s to early 50s, there's a moment in that decade ish where they become bored with what they're getting paid very highly to do, and you have the ability to look at that and think like, what is wrong with you? Do you know everyone else that's having to go to work at a chicken factory or a pallet plant or scrubbing off the bottom of boats all day long? Like what's wrong with you? But the reason you did it to begin with sucked you in through that emotional cycle and return of being creative. And then all of a sudden, somehow you figured out how to monetize it. And then you get kind of caught in a honey trap of you have to keep doing this to pay for yourself, or you have to systematize it and put it aside as a commercial venture and you service that as a creative and kind of focus on that as a creative business, and then make sure you maintain your own creativity lest you stagnate. Have you struggled with that same process at all, or?
100%. And it's interesting. I think I've struggled through my entire life with that aspect because it's
Okay.
always a bit of any commercial venture you take on, you're sort of at the whim of somebody else on some level, right?
Right.
You have a client, you have a patron, you have somebody who's kind of directing you, and you have to kind of follow their lead or take
Right.
their cues.
You
So,
have to
and
be
so
able to listen.
yeah, 100%. You have to be able to listen, and you have to be able to, it's not, I always tell our team, it's not about us and our design and our space and our furniture. It's about the client. And we need to make sure that we're expressing who they are and what their vision is. And I always think we have a successful project when I walk in and it looks like them, not like
Mm,
us, because
right.
it's
Right.
about them. They've paid us to bring sort of their ideas to life. So I've always really struggled with, it's creative, but it's creative only to a certain extent because you're kind of hit with boundaries, time,
Right.
budget, their direction, their colors, their sort of whatever they have is their agenda. But I've always been able to kind of quiet that creative mind by having outside projects. And I always have to have
Right.
like 5 projects going at the same time where,
Oh, okay.
I kind of like balance. And it used to be making things, it used to be refurbishing cars. And when I bought my first house, it turned into house sort of repairs and upgrades. I'm on to my second house, and I have, just I go room by room and I take it back to the studs and redo the entire room. And it gives me that time to like think about, what could it be, what could I do if I took this wall down and I move this, or could I add a window, or could I change this, or how do I sort of manipulate this item that I have. And it's free creative time, it's whatever I
Right.
want it to be. And so that's kind of how I've been able to balance that a bit, that
Yeah.
having sort of outside projects gives me that outlet. That's
Yeah. I'm very much the same. Have always had projects that I kind of manipulate into being work or something to provide for me or my family in some way, but they are very, like our first house that we bought, I eventually realized we took out every single first floor wall except for the exterior walls because
oh
I just kept going. And it ended up really, really nice and had these wooden timbers in it, and it was all open, and the kids could ride just like their little bikes and tricycles through the whole down, like have a lap and but yeah, same deal. Just constantly looking at like, all right, what can we do here? And now starting to do on that. What can we do there? Starting to do that. I think normal people will look at a complete project and just like get someone to advise, come in, complete the whole thing, and then go on with their lives. But I think maybe the creative mind has to have something that it's like you have a cat toy to play with, like keep the cat entertained.
Exactly. It's getting that creative mind entertained, like sort of doing its own thing in the background, thinking, creating, that it's not. And it's also, I rarely finish my projects, which, sort of drives me a little bit insane, but it's always that kind of, I get it to a point and then it's like, I got to think about it for a bit. And I'm on to the next thing a little bit, and I'll circle back and be like, I'll get it done. And
Mm.
then I kind of have another solution for the problem. It's that kind of back and forth that it sort of
How
keeps that.
How do you deal with the negative emotions that come from realizing you're not finishing those projects? Do you just let it sit and say, if it calls to be finished, I'll finish it? Or do you internalize it and say, I just can't ever finish anything? And I'm at that point.
Are you? Don't you just let it? I know that it's sort of almost like, I know I'll finish it eventually when I have to, but I never look at, my goal is not necessarily to finish it and make it perfect. So
Yeah.
maybe I already have the mindset that it's like constantly malleable. And so it's
Hmm.
always going to kind of change or morph into something else, or I'll get an idea, or I'll see something and I'm like, that's how I solve that problem. So it's kind of,
Oh, okay.
I've come to peace with that it's never going to be done. And so I don't
Right.
need
Okay.
it to be done, which
Hmm.
is, yeah, it's a difference, which I think is hard though, because, a bit of anything in life is like, once you're done, then you've accomplished something, right?
Right.
That's how you get that reward of, you finished it, now you get the reward. And that's how we're sort of trained, and that's the life with the world we live in. So it
Right.
is to kind of leave things undone. And it can be
Hmm.
frustrating and it's frustrating too, where if you have, a family and a wife where they're probably putting pressure to say, is this done? Is this done? Is this
Right.
done? Versus I don't have children, so they're not running around eating screws or, you know, running their hands through drywall or into electrical outlets.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a
Oh,
safer kind of space for me to do that in.
right. So, what has been as successful as you have in business, running a company, establishing a company, building a company with, what does it cost you from your life, if you speak of it in non-financial terms? Because
Yeah.
there's a cost. Because you could marry, stay home, raise a family. You could marry, have a family, send them to school, send them to daycare, do a business, or you only get so much time, and the more you do, the more you have to allocate responsibility elsewhere, not
Mhm.
personally. So how do you balance that? What do you know that you've lost in that? How do you sit with that and feel okay with it, and know I know I lost this, but that's what I paid to gain this, and I'm good with that. Like, how do you work through that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so. I was kind of raised with never the mentality of like you should get married, have children. That was sort of never, what we talked about in my family. And it wasn't something that we were sort of like, when are you going to get married and have babies? It was not any part of our conversation, which was my mother. She was kind of a very liberal woman who was like, you go out and take care of yourself and live your life. So I think that freed me of a lot of those sort of societal constraints that are put on women where, like you should get married. And if you're not married and you don't have children, then you're a failure. So I kind of never, so I think that was a good aspect that I kind of had that mindset already. And sort of also being sort of the only creative in my family allowed me, they've always been like, oh, you're a little bit of the different one. So I've never had to kind of follow the path that
Uh,
is the traditional path. And so I think that's freed me a lot in my life to kind of not have to have, not that I'm not goal driven, because I'm very goal driven, but I'm not goal driven around the sense of like, I, have some Pinterest board where I have all these things that I should do in my life. I very much approach life sort of in the aspect of like, if it comes to me and it's interesting, I'm gonna dig into it, and it may take me here or there, but I've never had sort of a plan, if you will.
mm,
And I think not
okay.
having a plan, there's probably a trade-off of not having a plan kind of could get you nowhere, or I could be at the end of my life and say, gosh, I wish I did these things. But I think it's also freed me in the sense of I don't feel the sense that I have to accomplish things. So that is my mindset. So I think in my work, it's freed me to sort of say, like, I really enjoy working, and I get a lot of reward out of working with clients, working with our design team and our engineering team. And so that feeds me and that makes me feel good. So I focused on that. And yes, I don't have children, so that is not something that's part of my life, but I don't see it as a sacrifice, because I think the experience of what I've had with this business and, my friends and my life that I've created outside of that, my projects, the work I've done on my own, has been immensely satisfying for me. So that
Mm,
that trade-off has been something that I feel like it's the path that sort of every time I did something that felt good, I was like, I'm going to do more of this. I'm going to keep doing more of this. And I didn't feel this pull to be like, society told me I should have children, or society told me I should have a house in the suburbs, or, a station
right.
wagon. It was just kind of like, I'm doing what I'm doing and what makes me happy. But I think
Right.
that's a hard place to follow that path in life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting for me to observe people that would fall into a stereotype, but buck that stereotype just naturally, because everyone falls on a gradient of the reason we have stereotypes. That, like, most people, for me, it would be the stereotype would be, get a 9 to 5 job, provide for a family, bring home the big kind of thing. And my identity would mostly be found in how I'm perceived through the work I do. As a man, this is our traditional stereotype roles, right? And I'm far more right smack dab in the middle, I think, on that, in that I find my most important value is being really close and present with my immediate family. So I trend, I think, more feminine stereotypically in my orienting goals. But I 100% cannot deny the pull towards I better make something of myself. And if I don't feel that people respect me through what I do, that becomes something that I do have to emotionally wrestle with. It's not, that doesn't just wash off my back. So I have this pull between the two, and I do find a lot of frustration in trying to figure out like, should I try and figure out how to start another business and see if I can get this to earn more money and grow more reputation? And I think I've come to a point of realizing that I don't have enough of that ability to focus my mind in, run a business, and manage people and social interaction talent. I don't have enough of that to skillfully manage and inspire people. I would more so criticize and control people if I was trying to do that over a long scale of time. It's not my natural ability. I'd have to have a lot of training to not be a bad person to work for. Right now, I have one employee, and he was basically self-employed. I do no management, and he's incredible. So I found the perfect setup there, and I got to a point where I had said, I can start to invest more time into trying to earn more money, just shooting more because I'm good at that, and I can earn a good amount of money doing that. But if I do that, I lose time with my family, and so I'm tuning my business to be able to work less, earn more, while being able to focus on the things I enjoy, while growing podcasting and everything else at the same time, which requires less management, but is right in the alleyway of where my interests are primarily. A little bit now past midlife, a little more intellectual and trying to understand and give back in a sense, rather than managing people and building a business for me personally. So it's interesting to me. I fall on this little bit more spectrum of feminine goals, while you fall on traditionally a little bit more masculine goals. And then it's interesting to me to see where, are we saddled with these things unavoidably? Do you end up feeling like, I do really wish I had a family, or I do really wish I had more of a career? And I struggle with, like, I don't need to establish a name in the community as much, even though I'm a man and that would be the masculine, stereotype that you need to do more of this. I have to tell myself it's okay to stay home, do nothing today, and just be with these boys. And that's that struggle for me, which is just interesting. So,
But do you think that's more of, I think we all get in that mindset, and I get in that mindset sometimes too, of like, oh my gosh, maybe I should have had children. And then I think about it and think, is that my own internal thought or feeling like I've missed something? Or is that more
right.
what society tells you? Because society tells
Yeah.
you all the time, every turn, that like, if you don't fit in this little box, then there's something wrong with you.
Right.
And so I try to catch myself around, like, is it because I feel like I've missed something or I want something that would add to my day-to-day life, or is it that someone else is telling me that I should
Yeah.
do that?
I
And
don't think you ever get a clear answer on that. You have to rely on your subjective interaction with the whole thing, which is an interesting point. Like when I work, it's all subjective. There's no right or wrong for where we compose, how we light, where we put the things in the image for styling. There's simply no mathematical thing for this. It's a subjective perception and then articulation, perception, articulation. And we have to kind of do the same thing through life and say, in this experience, I've enjoyed this and it's fed me long term. I probably should do more of that. And when I spend time with my kids and I'm close with them, it feels like this is substantive enough to give me all the meaning that is missing, for this part of my life. So double down on that. And when other people get that from work or anything, double down on that. So yeah,
yeah, it's following the good feeling, right?
yeah,
Take all of
yeah,
the, yeah, what you should be doing, get rid of that thought and do what feels good.
right, right.
Yeah.
Hmm. So I haven't even gotten to question number one here, really, but
Oh,
that's always good. It's a good conversation when I can't even get to my questions. But let's see. So we did cover that one already. So that gap between 95 and 98 was mostly personal exploration of what you would create. had you no clients. You were creating art at that point.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And what did that look like for you? What was it that you pulled out of your experience and objectified? Like when you had no clients, what was it that you were doing really?
I mean, it was really about, I mean, truthfully, I wanted clients. I wanted people that I could, that would like my work and purchase it. Um, but without having sort of a direct client telling me what to do, it was more about around what did I find interesting or what did I, just combining things together, sort of, I think I let maybe a lot of the materiality manipulate what I was really doing and what could I do with the materials and what tools did I have and what could
Mhm.
I build out of that and what could then I design from those sort of tools I had and material I had. And so it
Mhm.
wasn't so directly somebody asked me for this, and so therefore I have to produce this. It was sort of there was a bit of, I think I could sell something like this. So how do I, with what I have, how do I make something that then I think would be saleable and would be beautiful and
Mhm.
interesting? And so it was a lot of kind of free exploration. But I also think that the bad of it was that I sort of had no kind of end game to it, or almost no client, because it was just sort of like, and a little bit, you said it earlier, like it's all subjective. It was things that I liked and things that I
Right.
found interesting. And that doesn't mean that somebody else found it interesting or liked it either. So, I think that that sort of led to it was fun and interesting, and I got to create a lot of things and sort of have free time to create, but it lacked the sort of end result of things because it was just sort of this
Mm.
endless exploration of things and ideas
Right.
and stuff that never really got anywhere. Also, I think it feeds into a little bit of that I don't finish things because I would,
Right.
that was interesting. It's not like I have a client. It's not like I have a deadline. It's not like I have to sell this right away. Put it on the shelf, think about it for a bit, go on to the next thing.
So
So
it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you prefer working as a creative solving design issues for clients more than working as an artist producing something out of just your own experience, period.
I think I do, because I like that spark of sort of coming, that intersection of ideas and people coming to you and saying, well, this is kind of my vision, kind of kicking
Mm.
something off. And then that kind of dance, that back and forth around like, what could it be? Could it be this? Could it be that? I find the best experiences I have in my day-to-day work is when the design team and a client, we all get on a call together and we work live in 3D models. Because just to
Oh,
see
wow.
kind of adding their ideas in, and like I have an idea, I'm like, what about if we change this? But then someone else is sparked by something else and something else is sparked by that it's that kind of collaborative process that is the most rewarding part of my job when I get to do that. And we do it the engineering side too, when things are in models and engineering and we're looking at, like that doesn't look that great. How can we all solve it? And we all come together and kind of collaborate. So I do enjoy that because then it's a group activity. It sparks everyone else's ideas. And then it does have sort of, you have a constraint. It has to be done by a certain time. You have to figure something out. So it's not endless searching of ideas.
Hmm. Okay.
So
Now, you manage creatives now, essentially.
I do.
So
Yes.
what are the, like, give me top 3 tips of, like, here's how you manage creatives. And then I'll have some follow-up questions to that, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I don't know. I'm probably that classic problem of I was good at something and then sort of worked my way up and kept taking on more and more responsibility. So I wouldn't say that I'm great at managing creatives.
Well, proof's in the pudding, and you're in a successful company that you were part of the foundation. So
That's true.
we'll brag for you. Don't
Okay.
worry.
Okay. Thank you for that. I think it's that giving everyone sort of license and agency to express their ideas, but then sort of knowing when to, okay, that, we still have to get this done, and when to kind of shut it down and get it back on a path. Because it's like you
Mm,
got to have the exploration, but then you have to get things landed and done and executed on. Um, so I think that delicate balance, and each person is different. They have a
mm,
different tolerance for how much they can how much they want to explore and create and how much they need to explore and create. sort of allowing them to have that boundary to run, but then knowing when it's time to bring them in or bring it, be like, okay, we gotta get this done. I think the other part is how to navigate through certainly the client side of the creative team that I manage, how to manage through that being told no, that's a bad idea, that client interaction. That takes a lot of um, kind of really getting personal with them and saying like, it's not remove yourself from that feeling. Let's get on to the next thing. Let's talk. If you keep focused on the ideas and you keep focused on the creative aspect of the process and let all the rest of it go, you can keep doing it and you can keep having the energy and the life for it. But if you focus on like it wasn't done on time, too strict, too many constraints, it's soul crushing. And I
Mm,
think that's a hard balance from a business. We've had a lot of sort of our parent company and sort of, the business mind of it is often like, we got to record hours. We've got to, figure out charge for everything. And I fight hard against that at every turn. I'm like, we are not that business. Like, we are not going to put boundaries on this. We're not going to put time on it. It will kill what we do and it'll kill the spirit of the design team and the engineering team. Like, let's not focus on time. Let's focus on results and it will work itself out. And so being able to kind of balance a bit of that, I don't know if I'm always so good at it. I swing between probably too much of like, we got to get things done and deliver to clients and make sure they're happy to, and then I'm like, I got to pull myself back to the creative world of, okay, I got to remember to nurture this aspect of the business
mm.
and the people that work on the team too. So
Do you find yourself aware that you hover between a uh, get things done, non-creative, non-artistic mind, and a procrastinate, perceive, delay, and work through all those creative process? Because I could feel myself right in the middle between people that I knew that here's people that know how to get stuff done. They're not making real beautiful things. They're not really very introspective, but they get stuff done. And then over here, I would call them artists, and they were very sensitive to reality and could pull things out that no one else saw because of it. But they weren't ever going to be able to really get more done than that
yeah.
because of the deep ability there. Do you have people, both of those things that you find yourself in the middle? How do you bring those people together? And how do you identify someone that you're of that artistic type and you're very valuable to us, but we do have to manage you pretty highly because of it?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I tend to definitely be more on the side of getting things done. And I know that's
Okay.
in my nature of I'm a little more driven to the, the timeline, the deliverable. And yeah, I think I find that people are highly creative, fantastic ideas. They come back with just genius where you're like, wow, where did that come from? I think I manage them in the way of like outlining, sort of reiterating steps in time management is where I can kind of
Oh.
keep them on the path of like, okay, this is great and beautiful, but in the end, we need to do these 10 things and we have to do them within this time frame. When do you think, and I, rely on them to say, I ask them, when can you get this into your schedule? And when do you think we could work through all these things? And it gives
Mm.
them some ability to say, okay, I know I have to do the things I don't want to do, which are the technical things of writing up the details or doing an AutoCAD plan or something along those lines. Um, so they know I have to do it. And then, but if defining hours and time, so a bit of time management, like, okay, if you're only going to do that for 2 hours, it's not that painful. Then you can go
Mm.
back to the ideas and the creative and the sort of exploration. But these are necessary requirements of, it's the living your life. You got to brush your teeth, you got to sleep well, you have to drink water, kind of things. So just get them done, and then you can go on to what you want to do. So that's how I found that managing creatives is the best for me because I know that they want to do that and I know we're going to get great results from that and that's so valuable to our business.
Mm.
Um, but we also have to do a bit of this too.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah.
For a bit of narrative interest and slightly, I don't know, it could be the same emotion as gossip. But what was the point in your business where it like, I don't know if we're gonna make it, guys, and then you realized we're gonna make it, and what was it that caused the ability to make it? What
Yeah.
was that real tension point?
So it's funny. It was really around sales. And it was
Okay.
around, we have this great team, we have great abilities, but we can't find people who want our great abilities and our great, offering.
Mm,
So that was the point of like, if we're too internally focused around sort of our work and what we're doing, and we're not out meeting with people who want our work and who are willing to pay for it, that was kind of the point of like, this could just sort of like spiral down to nothing and become just sort of fall apart. And truthfully, what kind of that inflection point was, we had a salesperson, we hired a salesperson. We had our first salesperson who went out and said, I'm going to find people who want what we do. And so she
mm,
went out to the architecture and design community and found and talked about what we did. And that really turned the corner for us and opened, immense growth, immense opportunities, took us national.
mm,
So it's just having someone, and it's a bit of where I'm not good. And I'd mentioned earlier about learning about sales is I'm very internally focused. I'm focused on process. I'm focused on deliverables. I'm focused on things that are beautiful, taking care of a client, creating great ideas, beautiful details. So flipping that to saying like, we also have to have this other side of the business, which is finding clients and finding people
right.
who are willing to pay us for this. So that was the switch for me and for us
Hmm.
that really turned the corner.
I've always wondered and been able to feel this, but I'm a terrible salesperson. If you ask me to go out and meet with someone and be like, I can get in there and I can take the best photos, it just feels like such a manipulative lie. Like
Yeah.
it's weird, you know? But my wife, I watch her when she doesn't know I'm watching her when she talks to other people, if she's meeting them and she's telling them what I do. She goes into this whole thing that makes me sound like this world famous, like, and I'm like, yeah, that's not me, but I really appreciate that. But I wish I could employ you to go and sell my services to everybody because she's a real outgoing, entertaining, laughing, and you need a person like that for the sales team because the creatives aren't going to be able to go out there and it's like there's almost too much emotionality of difficulty attached with what they are selling to like the honest thing is we're like, look, we're going to do something amazing for you, but it's going to be just soul crushing and the best thing ever when we work through this and make something amazing. So you can't really just be all like sunny skies and butterflies and songbirds like a salesperson can. The salesperson's just like everything's great and they do it. So you
Yeah,
need that.
you absolutely need that. And the other thing is that it is so hard to sell yourself,
Yeah.
right? Because and creatives are typically very humble people. They often undervalue what they do. So it's totally not in our nature to go out and brag about ourselves. And that's,
Mm.
I think, yeah. So you need that person up front, and you need
Well,
the person.
I think the creative person has that self-critical voice just constantly going at very high RPMs. So you
Yeah,
have to take this part of your brain that's just like, you might suck, you might be doing this wrong. You don't know if it's right, it might be wrong.
yeah,
To
yeah,
like, all right, we're putting you in a safe and shutting the door, and I'm gonna go like just basically dance drunk and naked in front of these people and pretend that that doesn't exist to sell my talents. That it just does not compute for the people doing the work. And the time I really understood this was watching Mad Men, and I was
mhm.
like, all right, they got the creative guy. What are all these other people for? And I realized like, oh, they just need a guy to like entertain people, to just take them out and have drinks and stuff. And then they need a person who's following up with the more detailed stuff. And then an accountant and then and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. You can't expect to be all aspects of a business if you're going to grow.
Yeah, 100%. And it is a completely different skill set, and a skill set that is so valuable. I look at the people who do it and I am amazed that it's a grind. And it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, 7 days a week. And they love it. That feeds
Yeah.
their soul. And they get so much energy out of it. And when I have to do it with them, I'm 3 days in, I'm like, I want to talk to nobody. I need to go to like a
Right.
silent retreat, for a month and just like meditate. Like, it's so different, but it's
Yeah.
so necessary to have that
Yeah.
aspect.
I have a friend who's highly dyslexic. Um, he can he's a pretty creative guy, a good friend, good surfer from when I was younger. But I he's the most salesperson talent I've ever seen with
Mhm.
barely the ability to read. Like, but we were standing at this spot checking the waves, and there's this guy that owns a surf shop on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, who's the most just crusty, quiet, introverted curmudgeon that owns this surf shop, but makes these beautiful. He's a talented creative who's just very introverted and shy. And he's probably in his 60s, but we're both standing there checking the waves. It's like February, so it's cold on the East Coast and there's no one around. But this surf shop owner comes up and he's standing like 10 feet from us. I know if I need anything from the surf shop, he's closed for the winter. And if I need anything, it's from him that I got to get it. And there's no way I'm going to be able to charm him into doing anything. Anytime I try and do stuff like that, people kind of want to push the opposite direction. I'm just not convincing in that way. And I've talked to this guy before and tried to get him to act nice and interact. No, no game, no ball. And my friend's there and he's like, I need to get a hood. The water's cold and my ears are going to freeze off. And I'm like, well, Scott's over there, but good luck, you know. He saunters over and he just, hey, how's it going? 2 minutes later, he's like, well, come on over to my shop and we're going to do the thing. It's like, I never could do that. My wife, same way. I go to the gate for when we're taking off and I want to seat our family together or something, or they're just like, no. And in fact, we're going to give you a worse seat. That's how I do, you know, she goes over, they're like, we're going to move you all to first class and we're going to give you a special meal. And like, she just has that ability, that talent of connecting and moving people towards a better end. I can't do that. Those
Uh,
some valuable people.
so valuable, so valuable. I work with one of our business developers, Mitchell Zellinger, and he like we go into somewhere and instantly like yeah, I get the no, 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 no. And he can get people who would never respond to us. He'll call them, and the next thing you know, he's like, at their kid's birthday party or
Yeah,
taking them to
he did
golf.
some Jedi stuff.
Yeah, it's like I don't know what happens, but they can turn the switch like that, and it's an impressive skill.
Yeah, so I don't know that this is a pretty long explanation. I don't know that I could pull it out, but the assistant that I work with on all my shoots, he and I were talking about this, and it feels like for some minds that maybe border more to being on the spectrum, it can feel like manipulation if you interact with someone as an emotional person, like how you would see people normally emotionally interact. For someone who's a little closer to like spectrum, I think it might feel like, yeah, I could pretend to interact like you guys do and display the emotions to be able to make this work, or I could directly say what I see and what I think. And he favors directly saying what he sees and thinks, and then everyone's like, "You're an arrogant a-hole," and it's like, ah. And we had this moment where I was like, "Oh, you know what you have to do instead of manipulating people? What you have to do is you have to have a transactional exchange of you have to give vulnerability for them to be able to listen to what you have to say." And when I said that, it was like just the floodlights came on in his thinking. It seemed he was like, "Oh, that's not manipulative because I'm actually giving something." And then they'll, okay. Yeah, it's such a weird thing to be able to understand and work with people. The more I do it, the more I'm just kind of blown away by how little I know.
I'm with you exactly, and how different everybody is, and all like it's 10 degrees different. That you're like
Mm,
this formula worked last time, but it's not going to work here, and so I've got
right.
to tweak it just a little bit.
Tweak it, tweak it, tweak
Yep,
it.
yep.
Okay, last couple questions here before we take all your day. What have been your top three personality traits that have helped you succeed?
I am. I work incredibly hard. That I think is my winning formula for sure. I'm not the smartest. I'm not the most creative. I'm not the most, interesting, but I work very, very hard. And it's
Passionately driven.
passionately driven, and I will not give up on something. Like I mean, almost sometimes to my fault, where I'm like, we should give up on this. We need to not, let's move on from this. But that definitely has been my winning formula. That is my number one thing that has, I think having the tenacity to keep at something again and again and again, that,
Hmm.
it's, that if I look through my career, that's the thing that's definitely got me to where I am, and really our team as well to where we are, our company where we are right now, just grinding it out again and again and again.
Now, why do you think you have such tenacity, stick to itiveness, and follow through when it's for others, but not when it's something that's a personal project? Because
I think
I get that too, but I
yeah,
don't know why.
yeah, I think it's wanting a bit of maybe people pleasing on some level,
Hmm.
that I want people to be happy, and I know that in society, it's again that end game. People are,
Mm,
well, once you're done, and then they can tell, then they're really happy. It's that kind of that final transaction that takes place. Um, that I think that is the result they expect, and that's what we expect in society. So I know that I have to complete things, and it has to be done.
mm,
Um, Also, just I mean, just the reality of life and business that, you're not going to get paid until it's done. Your reputation is, on they remember the last four interactions, the
right,
500 previous interactions that were amazing, they don't remember. They're going to remember the last four. And so I think making sure that that aspect is satisfied is something that I know gets kind of the result we're really looking for.
right. I wonder if there's a aspect of it to that for would you find yourself to be fairly introverted or extroverted?
Oh, I'm introverted.
So
Yeah.
I wonder if the creative side of a personality, when coupled with introversion, which often it is, a lot of times, I wonder if the understanding within yourself is that my value in society is what I can contribute to helping them. There's creatives are held in society much like prophets. The difference between like a prophet and a priest is going to be someone who maintains, keeps people in line. It's that much more conservative ethos, where a prophet is this crazy whack job that lives by themselves up on the hill, but can see the whole from a different perspective and can inform and add value from that distant, introverted kind of weird place. Like, your family identified you as the creative. Maybe we won't put the normal expectations on her. You're the prophet in a sense. And I think when it comes to serving others, there's a response to the call of like, this is my greatest value that I can add. So I will follow through on this. But when I'm doing it for myself, this is practice. And it is not vital to finish this as much as it is to stay engaged in the process. But you definitely have to land when it comes to working with clients and society in general.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and that you
Mm,
said it best, it's practice,
yeah.
because I think it's almost like it's the workout for your creative brain, those your own personal projects. It's like allowing it to exercise and run around and just free think, that I think then informs the work that has to get done day to day. And
Mm,
you can pull from that then. And I also think
right.
it's a way to balance the bit of that. Like, you have to get things done, you have to get that executed on, you have to, deliver, but you still need that free kind of flowing time. And
Right.
free flowing never has to end.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like the play part of preparing for the game. The clients are the game. The creative on your own is the play that leads up to that, or the practice. So,
Yes.
okay, that's a good insight. I like that. What were the most difficult aspects of your personality to overcome to be successful?
I would say I'm quick to judge. That's definitely, like, I'm quick to judge, and I put you in a box. And I think that's been something that I really work on, sort of being self-aware enough to know, okay, I'm judging, I'm quick to judge on this person, and I'm quick to judge on this situation. And maybe I need to take a moment back and see what else is
Mm,
here, and what other sort of explore a little more before I leap to judgment, because
mm,
judgment shuts down opportunity. And so, and it's a constant battle that I fight, where I want to go to, like, definitive ideas, thoughts, perception of things. And I kind of constantly have to unravel that and be like, okay, well, slow down, slow down. That I think it's been a hard thing to kind of overcome, and especially in a creative field, right? Because it's just, it's it needs to just kind of be this kind of ideas are always good and thoughts are always good and people are always good. And how do you find that in everything? So
Mm,
that's something that kind of curtailing that and corralling it or knowing, okay, that's what's happening. I'm just going to let it sit over there and do its own thing, but I'm not going to let it kind of come into my judgment and how I manage people or manage projects or manage clients as well.
mm. Yeah, that's how did you come to that realization? I mean, did you experience some type of situation that you thought one thing and went down a road and then realized like, "Oh, I really went down the wrong road here because I jumped to a situation or analogy of a situation too quickly," or
I mean, I think it's more coming to the realization of just personal interactions with people and not getting what I wanted out of it, and then
Mhm,
realizing that that is my and a bit of some people giving me feedback and saying, "You do this, and this is not,
mm,
this isn't good for you. It's not good for me. How do we change that?" And realizing, I think, really how that I was sort of always aware of that, but I think realizing how that limits other people and that
mm,
how that limits my ability to work with other people and my ability to see the possibility in a situation. So
right,
I think it's, I've kind of realized that that probably that shut down a lot, and I need to be
mm.
able to maybe more open to that.
That's such a hard thing to do, to hear critical feedback on your own ways of doing things, your own personality or anything else to actually that because it's just so immediate, that defense of like, no, you're wrong, I'm right, I've thought about this. It's like you're not and but to sit with and be like, all right, maybe was I wrong in this? Did I choose selfishly it's like, whew, okay, all right. And I've that's been so hard for me, but it being able to create that separation and say, all right, I'm going to put my articulate mind here. I'm going to put my emotions here. I'm going to be in the center and I'm going to have to hear what these people have to say. And I'm going to need to listen to my emotions and I'm going to have to use my articulate intelligence to put me in check. And okay, all right. Yeah. Okay. And when you get more than one person telling you, then it's just like, all right, okay.
This is real.
Multitude of counselors, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, my last question here, look at this. Uh, how do you I and we already went through that one. How do you balance creative mind and business mind? So, kind of went through that, but did we wrap up anything, loose ends on creative mind, business mind? I mean, you find yourself right in the middle as a manager, but guiding, pushing creatives, but also working on the business side of it.
Yeah, I think one thing I've on the business, I mean, I think it's actually taken me a long time to really learn about, um, the business aspect of all the kind of ins and outs of the business aspect of it. So I feel fairly well versed in that at this point, and the one thing I do try to create is a firewall between the sales goals and the business aspect of it to the creative people and the creative team. I found that that's one thing that's really important, because when you are in a business that is like, we have deliverables, we have goals, we have financial obligations, balancing that or just sort of making sure that doesn't become this dark cloud that hangs over everybody. And I
Mm,
struggle with it too. There's times where that becomes, apparent to the team and I have to like shut it down and say, okay, that is not motivating and exciting and creative and interesting. And how do I make sure that stays on this side of the street and I manage that and deal with it and figure out how to go through it without sort of letting it bleed over to this side. So I think that's the
mm,
one thing that I'm probably working on the most at this point,
interesting.
and keeping that because you have creativity is not something that is easily tangible and put onto a spreadsheet and you can set goals against and metrics. And so it's finding that balance or finding that creating enough space for that to happen while still, you know, selling things, getting things done, making money at it,
Yeah.
paying bills, those kind of aspects.
That is such an interesting differentiation of groups that are doing work for a company. That it's kind of like you do not want too much objectified reality creating or oppressing creative fairyland imagination world over here on the creative side. You kind of want to make this like anything's possible and just come in when you want. And and be free and find the solutions. And then over here, everyone's at their desk with a tie and shirt tucked in and checking off boxes. You got these two things that you have to get them to play together, else you're not going to be successful, unless you're running an accounting firm, maybe. But yeah, that's a difficult one.
It's the tightrope to walk, and it's the problem of it flow. It like bleeds over, and then so you got to push it back. But then there's times you need it to bleed over because this is the reality of life. It's that constant ebb and flow of it because it's a
Right.
necessary. It's the problem of it's the necessary evil, right? The business aspect of it, but I always think of it as like the dark cloud of the business, and the creative is the light, fluffy part of the cloud. That's interesting. It's you don't want any too many storms by them
Yeah.
colliding, and
Yeah.
that's
It's yeah, but as in like it's that way in all things. So it's if you can understand one thing well, you can understand pretty much anything. And if there's no balance, it's going to be worthless. But you might get a personification of something, but it's not going to go very far. So you have to bring those things in and kind of strap them together and really make them work. So. Well, this has been really interesting to talk to someone so highly accomplished that comes from a creative mind and is like standing right on the divide between these two and making it work. So I really appreciate the opportunity to hear about your experience and what you're doing and how you've managed that. Because I do think a lot of people going into these fields, it's precious few that actually end up running a company that's successful, that they have the ability to lead a vision for or anything else. And to get more people like that sharing their experience and how they've been able to cope with having creativity, but also needing to do something in the world with it rather than just art, which is not to say just art. But if you want to make a real work a day world through creativity, it's a very, very difficult process, and then to make it as artist is even harder in my opinion. So thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us, Charlotte Wiederholt. Holt or
beautiful.
Hold?
Holt.
Holt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, my studio manager's last name is Holt, Holt. So you're Wieder plus Holt, Wiederholt. So
Thank you
there
for
we go.
enjoyed this.
Yeah, where are you at in LA actually? Are you
Rancho Palos Verdes.
Okay, cool. We spend a lot of time out in Ventura in the winter, and I have a friend who lives in the Inland Empire area in Loma Linda and around there. So we're pretty familiar with that area. I do a little bit of work out there and have some projects coming up this January out there, which will be fun. So nice place to be in the winter.
Yes, lovely to be here in the winter. Yeah, and not in Maine. Maine is lovely in the summer.
If you want to ski, sure, but yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been really enjoyable. And yeah, if you can share just your companies, where people can find out more about you and everything else?
Yeah. So we are obviously we're Tangram, or we're studioother.com.
Studio Other. Do you guys have an Instagram feed or anything else?
We do, yeah. Studio Other on Instagram. We're on Facebook and LinkedIn as well, and then our website as well.
Yeah. And if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask Charlotte, feel free to email me and I'll pass them on. All right. Thank you so much. And we'll have to do this again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.